This is trustworthy. Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Mary Beth. Join us for conversations in community,
Established by a trustworthy God. Well, hello there to a whole screen full of beautiful people this morning. We have Christine Elsen, and we have Maggie Walker, and we have our darling Mary Beth Gambita.
Always here. Welcome, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have handpicked these fine individuals today. I'm just trying to make them more and more nervous as we get started. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and I will say this, before we started our first podcast recording, like way back in the prehistory of Trustworthy Podcast, I asked Christine, hey, would you ever agree to be interviewed on our podcast? And she was an early affirmative response. She said, yes, I would. So here we are. We're finally following through on that intention, Christine.
Here we are. Stay's finally here.
Well, Sarah, we, like a lot of our guests, know these fine ladies from church initially, primarily, but maybe we could each share a little bit about how we know them more. I think Maggie and I first got connected through Mothers of Preschoolers.
Yes.
And Christine similarly was a mentor mom there. I can't remember, Christine, like when we first met, if it was through that or just church stuff or school stuff or what, but.
Yeah, I think it was either MOPS or maybe even Young Life.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was many years ago.
And then Sarah, what would you say your intro to these lovely ladies was?
I think Christine and I got to know each other better through Mothers in Prayer. And Maggie, because of, I guess, her interaction with my son and him helping out with the youth at church. But I remember running into her family years ago in Chick-fil-A, I think, when my son was young enough to still be in the playroom there. And we had a great conversation. I don't quite remember all the details, but it was a good conversation.
I remember enjoying our conversation.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's have another good conversation today, ladies.
Here we go.
So we're kind of in this series we're doing on education and how we as believers are navigating education for our children, choosing it. So maybe, Christine, I'll let you go first. Can you just tell us the age range of your kids, where they are in their schooling? And then Maggie, I'll have you answer the same question.
Yes. So I have 5 children, and the oldest is 24 and the youngest is 12. So we've been making educational decisions for our kids for decades at this point. And we have more or less stuck with our initial decision, which we made 25 years ago, which was public school. Yeah. So that's kind of the dynamics of my family, the age range. So.
And that has been primarily here in the same school district Sarah and I are in, right? But you started, y'all
Yes.
in Illinois, is that right?
That's correct. My oldest did kindergarten in Illinois, and then we moved here in 2007. And actually, he repeated kindergarten again just so that he would not come in as a new kid. He's a late summer birthday. So that was a great decision. No regrets about that one particular decision for sure. But yes, so we are at Unionville Chadds Ford School District.
Okay. And then Maggie, what about you?
So I have 4 kids. My oldest is an adopted. He's 26. He did public school all the way through. We have homeschooled the next 3. So 4th grade, 2nd grade, and kindergarten.
And you started with your oldest when
I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then the next question, ladies, is how did you decide? So we'll stay with you right now, Maggie. How did you and your husband decide to homeschool your 3 younger children?
So as we were thinking through some of these questions that you gave us ahead of time, it was kind of funny because I kept coming back to it's a little cyclical in some ways. So I was homeschooled from day one through graduation. And so in some ways, I think that it started with my parents' decision to homeschool me. I was thinking through why I was homeschooled. We moved around a lot. That had a huge factor in it. But then it was also my mom just wanted a really hands-on Christian approach to my education. And I just had such a special experience through my whole time being homeschooled that from when I started thinking about, oh, when I get married one day, what will we do? I always wanted to try it. I always wanted to give my kids a similar experience. And luckily, when I met my husband, he was in for that. And so, but obviously it's evolved a little bit. Our why has evolved. And so I think that it's been really powerful for me to want to be around them for as much time as I can in their little years. I think that's been a huge factor for me, recognizing that it's going by so fast already. And I love the fact that I get to be with them during the day and kind of impact their education a little bit. I was convicted through a conversation with my cousin many, many years back. I remember she said, we want to be their lead discipler in their best hours. And that really stuck with me. I love getting to be with them when they're not groggy and when they're not tired. I like being with them, throughout the day and getting those little moments. And I think that is what has shaped my desire, my why to want to homeschool them. And my husband is super supportive of that thought.
Now, did your husband do public school? What was his background growing up?
He was private Christian school all the way through.
Okay.
And he had a great experience there too and loved his experience. And so, yeah, it's just, he's been really great to support whatever we think each kid needs each year. That's what we've committed to, is like reevaluating, recognizing we have to hold it very open-handedly, but hoping that this is going to work, but recognizing it might not work with each kid. And so he's been really great about being open about all that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I like the quote that you gave from your cousin, I think it was, I want to be the lead discipler in the years when it matters. Can you repeat that?
She said, I want to be their lead discipler in their best hours.
The lead discipler in the best hours. I love that. Wow. Okay, well, thank you. Christine, same question for you. How did you and your husband arrive at the decision to send your children to public school?
So we made the decision when we lived in Wheaton, Illinois, which is a very sort of conservative, strong Christian, strong churches, strong youth groups. We had a lot of community there. And so we made the decision that we were going to take the path of least resistance, that we would do what was simple for our kids, and that knowing that we had other options if things went awry, if there were problems. And I think just as we kind of parsed it out in our minds, we did also, kind of opposite of Maggie, just felt like there were a lot of Christians surrounding them and their community and in their circle, that we also wanted those people to influence them. And that was truer in Wheaton than it has been here, although my children have had some wonderful Christian mentors here and through the public school. But our thought was, we'll take the path of least resistance from the beginning, knowing that there are other options available to us if there were any problems. My husband really, I think, he felt more strongly about it than I did. He grew up going to public school. I grew up going to private schools, but not Christian private school, just more of like preparatory schools. So neither of us came from like a Christian education background in our younger years. We both went to Christian colleges. But anyway, that was our decision-making process.
Thank you very much.
So as you're thinking about these decisions and I'm sure, you both still have children that have a lot of years left of school. Sorry, Christine, you're not done yet. One of the things that I often think about just as a parent of someone school aged as a believer is the duality of, are they getting a good education? And also, what are they learning? And are they learning the most important things, that we want them to be learning about worldview and God and who they are? And maybe y'all could talk a little bit about how you see pros and cons of the choices you've made so far and how that's working, both just from the education side, but also from the discipleship side. Christine, I'll throw it back to you first.
Sure. Well, I think from the educational side, my children's what they have learned, the content of what they have learned, the education has been amazing. I mean, what they have learned, the breadth of what they have read, the extent to which they discuss current events and take in just so much information. And I think the teachers within our school district are so very committed to their profession and to excellence in the classroom. And I feel like without any qualms do I feel completely confident in the content of their education. I don't feel they have dabbled in things that contradict our faith or that would in any way, I don't know, discourage them in their pursuit of Christianity or Jesus Christ. So there's that, but there's also, to Maggie's point, like they are not being discipled throughout the day. Their Christian character and their Christian formation, I guess I would say, is not anyone's priority during the school day. That is what is left to us in the groggy morning hours and in the exhausted evening hours and on the weekends, of course. But yeah, I would say the quality of their education has been just mind-blowing. So did I answer the question?
Yeah. And then what do you think have been the pros, if any, just from the discipleship side of things, of your kids being in a public school environment? Do you see any pros?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say pros as far as discipleship goes. I would say pros as far as other Christian teachers who are making a witness, examples of how to function as a Christian in a non-Christian environment. I think there are examples of that. I don't think there's discipleship happening per se.
Right.
My children are involved, or have been and still are involved in Young Life, which is a Christian ministry on our campuses. And there is definitely discipleship happening within the school community, not at their schools. But Young Life has been very formative for them, relationships with their Young Life leaders and going away on camp trips and also the opportunity to really bring their friends into the faith, non-Christians non-churched, I should say, friends who have been able to participate in that. It's a very easy entry point as a non-churched child to hear about the gospel. So that has been kind of the extent of their ministry, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then, Maggie, with your experience being able to focus so much on the discipleship during the day, maybe you could talk a little bit about pros and cons of both the education side and the discipleship side. Sure. Experience.
So, and I just want to preface this by saying, I recognize that this can be a sensitive subject for people. And there is not one perfect solution, right? Or panacea for the education of a kid. And that's what's kind of cool is I think probably, at least I know, I go back and forth constantly about, is this what's right? And it's been cool to talk with people that send their kids to Christian school, friends that send their kids to public school. And it's just really cool to hear that we're all kind of just, is this what's best? And so, as I was thinking through the pros and cons, there are cons, right? I loved what Christine said about how her kids have teachers investing in them that are sharing their perspective and their witness, especially the Christian teachers, investing in them, having multiple adults pour into her kids. My kids don't have that. It's me, and it's up to me building this maybe morally thick community around them, asking adults to invest in them. They don't necessarily have people in authority like a kid who goes to school has, other than me. And so that can be a challenge. And my husband and I were talking about, we're not sure that like my kids are getting the very best education, because that would be super haughty of me to think that like someone who goes to school, who gets trained in this for years, educated in this, is not doing as good a job as me. And I definitely don't think that that's true. We live in one of the best districts in the state, in our county, right? Like my kids would be probably going, I think it's the top ranked elementary school in the area. So like, I know that they would be getting a phenomenal education outside of my home. But I think for me, I'm doing my very best to educate them, and like doing it to the best of my ability and pushing them to what I think is appropriate. But at the end of the day, I think why we're homeschooling is not for that reason. And I think that can be a pro and a con, right? And so I think that the pro would be getting to invest in them and help shape their worldview and kind of have a hand on the content that they're learning. But the con would be maybe it would be taught way better and more creatively by someone else, and they could be missing out on that. I think that another pro would be, again, maybe they're not getting the best education out there, but I think that getting to protect them a little longer by maybe missing out on some of the unnecessary social things that could happen in school, maybe sheltering them for a little bit longer. But I think a con would be also like, I'm going to have to be really intentional with teaching them to understand what they believe and why they believe it. Because if they're not being challenged by peers in that way, then when are they going to learn? And so trying to create those situations for them. Whereas I feel like kids who go to school, they really get tested trial by fire. Like, why do you believe what you believe? And so I think there's, again, pros and cons with every single form of education. I think just for me, I'm trying to not care as much about the education piece as I am about who they're turning out to be. And I think that can be a pro and a con sometimes.
Well, I would say to that point, just as a word of encouragement for you, they are where God wants them to be. You are the teacher God wants them to have. He's equipping you to do what you need to do. So don't sell yourself short on that front.
Thanks. One more thing. I think another con real quick is that I wear two hats, right? I wear the teacher hat and the mom hat. And sometimes that can be really hard. Like if we have a hard day doing school as I'm the teacher and like trying to push through hard attitudes or push through like, I don't know, just a tough lesson or whatever, then to switch to the mom hat after we've had a hard day is really challenging. And sometimes I get envious that like, I don't have a bigger, almost like a division of church and state. They're still with me.
Yeah.
We're still having a hard day. And I don't get to have that like, oh, you had a hard day at school. Now come home and be with me and we'll do life. It's like, nope, that carries on. And I think that can be really hard sometimes.
Yeah, that's a great point. Also, when you were talking through that, I think what you said about, and Christina, I would like to get your thoughts on this. Maggie, what you said about how, your kids aren't challenged at a young age in terms of what they're believing because they're surrounded by such a strong community within your family. I know my boys, one of my sons came home yesterday and said, Mom, we were talking at the lunch table about hell and about God. He's in first grade, about hell and about God. And he said, everybody at the table said they believe there's a God except for one. And he said, we came from monkeys. So they're definitely facing this stuff early. And to me, it's like the opposite side of the coin from you. It's a pro and a con from my perspective. I love that my kids are having these conversations, but I also am very concerned that they're not equipped to have them yet. So I don't know, Christine, if you have thoughts on that part of it.
Yeah, I resonate so much with what you're both saying, but especially what you just said, Mary Beth. My middle daughter, when she was in elementary school, just came home in tears one day and just said, "My friends don't believe in Jesus." And she's just trying to tell them, like, you have to believe in Jesus if you're going to heaven. And so I totally agree. They are really kind of, I think Maggie said, trial by fire. Like, they're in it, from a young age, and they're not equipped. And yeah, it's true. I don't really know any way around it, but on one hand, it's good. They're able to share what they believe. And on the other hand, you're wondering, like, oh boy, what kind of damage control do we need to now go back through and clean up from this? And I just want to touch on one other thing Maggie said that is such a good point, Maggie, that you made. Well, first of all, so many good points that you made, but I love that you said we're reevaluating. We're not sure we're making the right decision. There's a hundred different directions you could go with your education. But one thing that just really resonated with me was how you said you're able with your kids at home to protect them from kind of the social pressure and maybe the damage that can come from these social relationships. And I think that's something that we so overlook. And my first two children were boys, and then I had a daughter, and it's just so different with boys and girls. And now my last child is also a daughter, and that is a big, like, I would trade quality of her education to protect her soul and to protect her from the mean girls or from her becoming a mean girl or, So I think the social pressure is, I'm realizing, a bigger piece of my equation now in my decision making than it was with my first two children who were boys and seemed to be so much more aloof from it. But I just wanted to kind of touch on that because I think he brought it up as a point. But for me, that's becoming a bigger and bigger issue.
If you ever feel like things are working against you, you're not alone. And we talk about this on our next episode.
Join us next time for our discussion about spiritual warfare and the protection from the whole armor of God. Yeah, it sounds like we're all, just as you said, I'm going to say it again, constantly reevaluating. I know that I certainly am. We certainly are. Mary Beth and I discussed this, I think, last time about these are the decisions we're making for now. And there are all kinds of factors. And even from year to year, sometimes month to month or day to day, you just wonder, is this the right path? But that is a decision that each family needs to make for themselves.
And it leads into how we find community as parents of children in education. I mean, this right here is a snapshot of four different people who have we all have our own different educational backgrounds that we're bringing to the table. Our husbands have their own backgrounds. We're doing it, some of us similarly, some of it differently, but we're also all in community together, at the same church, in the same area. We're involved in a lot of the same things. So maybe, Maggie, you could talk about that. How are you experiencing community in this specific area in terms of educating your kids? And how are you helping your children find that Christian community outside of just your family?
I mean, I think it has taken a lot of intentionality because I am more rare, or our family is more rare, right, in what we've chosen to do. So it's looked like finding a co-op of families that are trying to do a similar education style as us, which has been really helpful. We're part of a co-op in Glen Mills. I think it's like 150 kids and 120 kids. And it's been really special for my kids to feel like they have a group of kids that are similar to them, but they can get together and learn together and experience a little bit of what it would be like to be in a school. It's kind of modeled after a school for a day. And so I think that's been really helpful. It's been really encouraging for me to see other moms that love Jesus and are just trying their best. I feel like that's all we're doing. And then I think for me, it's really important to find community in our church, right? Our church is the backbone of our world. And so it's great for me to have support from friends, whether they homeschool or not, just to keep, I think we are all, the four of us even, are just women that love Jesus a lot, want our kids to know Jesus and live out the calling that he has called us to. And so I think it's really important for me to have that. If I feel poured into and supported, my kids are going to feel that if I'm feeling taken care of. And so just finding friends for them that know God and are trying to support each other in their walks, even at a really early age, because I think life is just going to get harder and harder for them. As we've all experienced, as we get older, life can be challenging. And so if they feel like they have a community they can fall back on, going through those challenges is going to be a lot easier. And so just making sure that my kids feel surrounded. We have a super great family situation on both sides that are very supportive and loving. And I think my husband was saying he likes this term, a morally thick community, right? If our kids are surrounded by a community that loves the Lord and we're all trying to do the same thing, even if the avenues are different, I think that's where people feel loved and supported. And so that's kind of how I feel the community around me.
That's great. Thanks. Christine, what would be your answer to that question? How have you found community for yourself as a Christian parent, and then also trying to help your kids find that as well?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the distinction that has been hard, is that I have found great community. I feel like I have, through Bible study. I've been in Bible study with each of you guys, I think, for many years, but through Bible study, through Moms in Prayer, I feel like I'm well supported and I have great community. I do not feel like my kids, especially through the high school years, had great community. I would say it was really more of like a drought situation, especially for my oldest three through their schools. Now, within the church, we did have, for my first two boys, we did have what we called the boys group, and it was a group of dads and boys, and they met on a weekly basis. And that was the community that my boys grew up with. Those friends will be their lifelong friends. They did everything together, camping trips and church and serving and bike trips. And they had a great time together. But within our school, I would say, like, I could count on one hand their friends. And honestly, like when they come back from college, and now some of them have graduated even from college, there's from their schools literally no one that they want to connect with. So that is sad. But they do, they're very socially adjusted at this point. They've made great friends in college. They went to Christian school for college, and really, I feel like I just have this visual of them that when they were in high school, they're just afraid to spread their wings, like these frail little butterfly wings. And they got off to college and were in a safer environment and really just soared. So I don't know, like, would they have soared if they hadn't been in that kind of sheltered place where they were afraid to spread their wings? I don't know. But high school is, for my kids, I know it's not the case for everyone, but high school for my kids has been very, very hard as far as finding Christian community. So,
Yeah. And as a parent of elementary school students who's looking ahead to the future, I feel like our Moms in Prayer group is always very eye-opening for me. That's why I'm very grateful for it, just from the community perspective, that I can kind of see what's coming, but I can also see that God is still working. He held on to your kids, Christine,
yes.
He didn't let them go. He had a plan.
Yeah, and as hard as it was with their friendships, there were Christian teachers at that school that were really a source of encouragement to them. And so, yeah, so there are some bright lights in the darkness, but I don't know, high school is tough. And I think high school is getting tougher year by year, what these kids face. And I mean, I think my oldest, when he went through high school, is going to have a completely different experience than my youngest by the time she reaches high school. So just the whole landscape of high school and education in general is changing so much. Yeah, that's kind of discouraging from what I share, but it is the reality. I will say they did survive it, and they've all come out on the other side. God is faithful, like you said. But it does, in a way, throw the onus back on the parents to build that community within our home. Thankfully, we had a lot of children, so there were plenty of people within our home that they could interact with. Yeah, but it was lonely. It was a lonely time.
Sarah, I feel like I'm dominating. So if you want to say something, feel free.
I am really enjoying listening to both of you share these experiences. And maybe it is because, as you mentioned, Christine, the four of us have known each other and have been in various Bible studies, just different things together. But I almost feel like as I'm listening, I so resonate with everything you're saying, because even though our experiences are different, our experiences are the same.
Mm.
We are coming from the same place. Like Maggie said, we just all love Jesus and we want our kids to know Jesus. And how that happens, boy, tooth and nail, skin of our teeth. I mean, every day, right? Just, especially when it comes to this, my desire is for my son to take hold of the faith for himself. I often think about the verses that Paul wrote to Timothy, and he talks about the faith of your grandmother Lois, which my grandmother was Lois, so that's always special to me. But that's what I want him to have someday when he looks back and says, it wasn't my mom's faith, it wasn't my dad's faith, it wasn't my grandfather's faith, it was my faith. So how do we do that, ladies? How do we do that?
I wasn't prepared to come with answers today.
Okay, so. Yeah. and maybe that's just I think that's more just, well, it's not a rhetorical question because gosh darn it, we need to answer it.
Yeah.
But that's the struggle, right? Having our kids grab hold of that which will sustain them through their life. And whatever the route. Mary Beth and I discussed the other day about our own educational experiences. And at the time, as I was going through it, I did not agree with the choices my parents made. But in hindsight, I loved it. I thought that it worked out just perfectly. And of course, that's confirmation bias maybe, but it just shows that God is at work and he is faithful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. And I'll just add, Sarah and I talked about this too, but just to get Maggie and Christine's thoughts on it. So I kind of have a mix of homeschool, public school, Christian school background. And I was telling Sarah, I came out of high school. My high school years, I was learning about every major world religion and how Christianity compares to them and why it's true. And this was at school in my day-to-day. And so I was being surrounded by influences that were reaffirming what I was learning at home. And there's a part of me that grieves that my boys don't have that. And won't necessarily have that if they stay in public school. They will not have that, what I had. And so part of it too, for my own wrestling with this as a parent is, and this is true across a lot of veins of parenting, being willing to let go of control and saying, okay, God, like my children's experience will not be my experience. And that is okay. And even Maggie, for you, even though you were homeschooled, I'm sure it looks very different for how your kids are being homeschooled than how you grew up and what was available and how it was done and all these things. And you're just, you're not your parents, so you're going to do it differently. So I don't know if that makes sense to y'all, but that's kind of my constant struggle too, is I know what I had and I know what my boys don't have. And how do we know we're making the right choice? I mean, I think I don't think that I'm ever going to feel 100% sure in it, but isn't that the walk of faith,
Mm-hmm. And I think that something that God revealed to me earlier this year was that I am not God. Shocking, I know. Spoiler alert.
Oh, you learned that too?
But it was really freeing because I think especially because I've chosen, in some ways, I think homeschooling can be the harder path. And I'm not saying that to be like I'm holier or whatever. I just mean it can just be so much more challenging in the fact that there's a lot that goes into that. So I think for me, there's been a control piece that has come along with that. And it was the most freeing day. I went on a silent retreat and the Lord was like, you are not God. Like, let go of their futures. You cannot control. You might even think that you have control because they're home with you and you're trying to protect them from all this stuff that's going on. But at the end of the day, sin is still there and I am still God. And it was the most freeing day. And hopefully I can hold on to that for forever. But just like recognizing that He is in control and their path is there as the one that God has picked for them. And if we end up sending them somewhere else or whatever, He's still in control. And so that was such a cool moment that I hope to, again, hold on to for a long time.
Yeah, I love that. I think also, I look at my youngest daughter and I'm like, are we really going to do this again with her? It was hard with my older kids. And are we going to do this again when there are other decisions to make? And I don't know if we are or aren't. It's a year by year decision. But I think just to realize that, like, struggle isn't all bad. It's not, I see how my children thrived when they went away to college. And it's like, is that, I know I touched on this earlier, but would they have thrived that much if they had grown up in a Christian school? Would they have found it to be so refreshing to go to a Christian college? Or would they have felt smothered? And I think, to Maggie's point, we aren't God. We don't know how these different phases lead into the next phase, how this is a time of training that leads into this time of flourishing, or this was a time of struggle that now God is giving you a time of rejoicing afterwards. All of it is kind of a part of the Christian life. I mean, it's in scripture over and over, the different seasons. And I think that in my mind, I want to protect my kids from like the painful seasons, but that's also not the right choice either. So, and I'm not saying any of us are doing it. I mean, we of course want to protect our kids from heartache and struggle any chance we get, but I'm not willingly adding to their struggle, or I'm not intending to. I might be, but I'm not intending to. So I don't know. I think just to realize that there is a purpose even when we struggle and have the hard days.
Preach, girl. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe that's where we can end on an encouraging note of, where do you see God at work in your children's current educational environments? How are you seeing God show up there?
Maggie?
I thought you were going to go first. I was trying to think through this question, and it kind of goes along with what we've been saying, is just every day is another day in their journey and in their testimony. Every day we are being sanctified through our kids, and every day they are being sanctified through us, and ultimately, obviously, through God. But gosh, just being a parent, this isn't even about education, right? Like, just being a parent and dealing with your kids is so sanctifying. And so it's been a privilege to get a front row seat into watching my kids learn things for the first time and grasp concepts and having them maybe understand more about God's character. But yeah, I don't really have like a big grandiose answer besides the fact that just every day is a new day and a new journey and a new lesson. And it's fun sometimes to watch, but it can be really painful. And so just kind of what Christine was saying is, God is using every day, whether it's painful or joyous, to bring them closer to God. And I'm in for the journey, and hopefully He uses me somehow.
Yeah. No, I totally resonate with that, Maggie. I mean, I don't think I could add anything to that. Just, I think it is their journey, and it's also my journey, their education. It is me also listening to the Lord and me having these kind of conversations that are so just empowering and eye-opening. And I want them to be teachable, and I want me to be teachable, and I want to be willing to go where the Lord leads us, as a family. And yeah, so I love getting to, I think Maggie, I think I may have talked to each of you about education in months past about choices and are we making the right ones? And, we each have had conversations and we've landed on different paths. And I think that's just the beauty of it, is that God is on each of these paths with us. He's with each of our kids, whether they walk the halls of a public school or down the hall in their house. He's right there with them. And yeah, so.
I think that would be an interesting question for us to answer too, Mary Beth. Since we're all four friends here, let's dole it out. And I'll answer first because I've been thinking about what my answer to that question would be. So how have I seen God at work in my son's education in the public school? Two ways. One is ending up at his elementary school in this district. That was not going to be our first choice, but through friends, I think I shared this on our last episode, he ended up in the school that he was supposed to be in. And then even in middle school, I was just really struggling and questioning. I think I talked to you about this a lot, Christine, but we found the mountain biking team. And that was such a clear answer from God for him, for me, to build community and to even come together with other Christian families within that community. So I would say those are clear signs. And then the other thing is that he has been able to make connections with friends at school that also attend church. And that's been really sweet too.
I feel like I have a very long answer to this question, so I'm going to try to pick a short answer. One way I see God working is bringing more people to either back to church or to church that are in our school community. Has nothing to do with me, but I've just noticed that God has been moving there, and it's really encouraging to see that just in a macro level. And then specifically with my boys, I alluded to this earlier, but the conversations that they are having with their friends and they're thinking through things for themselves, part of that is just the age they are and they're starting to think more for themselves and think through things. But being able to get the front seat to that they're willing to come home and process those things. This is what I'm hearing about church. This is what I'm hearing about God. Is hell real? People say it's not. We know it is. Wrestling through those conversations with them, there's no clear sign to me that the Holy Spirit is present and active and doing something in them, which, as we've said, that's what we want for them, right? So I don't know what their paths are going to look like in their lives, but when God gives me those little glimpses of, I'm here, I'm working, those are the encouragements to me, I think.
Love that.
And they're still young enough that they will come talk to me about these things.
Yes.
Well, with any luck, they'll continue to keep coming to talk to us. Well, are there any final thoughts or questions?
The only thing I would say is when I was thinking about, because this has been a conversation my husband and I have had, and I'm sure like I said, we'll continue to have it. And as Christine, you've been talking about it. And the thing I kept coming back to is just knowing your why, right? Of which choice you're in and what is that doing for you, for your kid? What is that impacting in their heart and their faith? Because in the long run, I don't think, I know we care about education. Obviously, it's important to be well educated. But at the end of the day, I think we mostly care about who they are and who they're going to turn out to be. And so just understanding that whatever we decide as parents is what's best for them as the whole kid versus just their education. I think that's the part that I keep coming back to. And I think that'd be my advice to anybody who's thinking about, whatever, constantly debating it. So I think that's my only final thought.
Yeah, I love that. I think my only advice that I would have is to look at the long term, kind of echoing what Maggie's saying. Long term, who do we want these children, what kind of citizens do we want them to grow into? Leaders and people who aren't afraid of things, people who are committed to Christ, people who are resilient. Some of these long-term, the struggle may be hard today, or it may be hard for the next 3 years, but long-term is the why worth it. So
thanks.
I like that idea of the why, asking yourself, making sure that you understand what is the why, and is that still being adequately addressed in my education choice? Is this still the right path?
And I'll couch this too with saying we live in a place and a time where we get to make choices like this, which is a huge gift in and of itself. And I know none of us discount that either. So just being thankful that we have options, I think, is part of it too. But we appreciate y'all being willing to be vulnerable about these things and talk about these things. And I think you have wonderful children. So I think you're doing a good job, ladies.
I agree. Yeah.
Oh, this was fun. Thank you.
Thanks for having us on.
You're welcome. Thanks for being willing to be interviewed. Well, friends, thank you again so much for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation and discussion, and maybe we can get together and talk about something else again sometime, because I feel like I got a lot out of this just in this hour with you. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. I'm Sarah.
I'm Mary Beth.
I'm Christine.
I'm Maggie.
And this is Trustworthy.
Hey, y'all. Mary Beth here. Sarah and I are so glad that you chose to listen to our podcast. And while we think that we're awesome friends to have, we just wanted to clarify that we are not mental health professionals and want you to know that this podcast should not take the place of any paid professional advice.
Hey, listeners, we've been hearing from a lot of you how much you're enjoying our podcast.
We'd appreciate it if you would follow and subscribe on whatever streaming service you use so that more people can find out about Trustworthy.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for the encouragement. Talk to you soon.